Yeah, the thing that I try to share with people a lot is that it's a process. It takes trial and error. It takes a lot of time to figure out like where you're, I mean, for most people. Some people are like, this is what I want to do, and I've known since I was 7, and I'm just gonna pursue that. And that's a
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Behind the Booth. I'm Jade, and with me, as always, is my co host and producer, Heather.
and on this channel we talk about wild stories from Comic-Con vendors because we are Comic-Con vendors. If you've been listening to this podcast for any amount of time, Jade has her own booth, Tokyo Dog Designs. It's beautiful, it's colorful, and we would love to meet you. So please come see us. We will have a list of all the conventions that we're going to be at. Please come and see us. We would love to meet any of you that are listeners and just talk about all things Comic-Con, all things being a vendor. Today we actually kind of have a serious topic that I know happens for, well, I'm not going to say all people, but most people, right? It's about the right finding what you're passionate about and how imposter syndrome can really creep in on that, because we both have experienced this. And so we'd love to talk about it because for you guys, for you listeners, a lot of you are going to be artists or just, people wanting to make it in that world, and a lot of things can creep into your mind about how you're not good enough. So Jade, go ahead and get us started with that.
Sure. So there's a lot of different interpretations of this concept of imposter syndrome. The way that I have felt it personally has been based off of just not being good enough, or what was I thinking doing this? How could I have ever done this? I'm underqualified. That's how I've always interpreted it for myself. I've owned a variety of businesses, very successful in different things. I've tried things from being literally a VA before virtual assistants were even a thing. I should have patented that, by the way. So this, again, if you haven't listened to our patent project podcast, listen to it, because you learn things. So I've had that. I started a video company back when nobody really understood why video is important for their businesses. So I was kind of ahead on the curve on a few things. And when it comes to, oh my gosh, I want to do this, and then you start doing it because you believe that you can, and then you start seeing the world around you and how people are reacting, or other people that are similar to you doing something, but they're doing it better. Or if you're like, oh my gosh, I thought my work was really good, and I see now that it sucks. Like, you feel all of those things. And it reminds me almost of like the moment after you throw up, like that feeling that you get right afterwards. That's what imposter syndrome feels like to me. Is like overwhelming.
Mm.
It's like you feel gross afterwards, but you kind of feel better. But then you're like, oh my God, what did I just do? It kind of feels like that to me. And it's probably not the most eloquent way to put that, but it's very vivid.
Yeah, I
So,
think most people can relate to that. Yeah, I
um,
know that feeling.
when I met Heather, actually, she was kind of going through the same thing. She had just started some
I was
VA
not
work.
puking. I was just starting a
No,
business.
sorry, I should be more specific. She did come to me nauseated. Uh, I met her kind of, I guess it was mostly over lunch. Heather, how do you recall this interaction?
Well, like, I guess the first time we really talked to each other was, yeah, we got lunch that first day at the boot camp. Um, and I was very overwhelmed because of just, it was my first business convention conference basically that we were at. It was my first time being around a lot of entrepreneurs, and I definitely felt very small. And nobody made me feel that way. I just did because I was like, "Oh my gosh, what have I even gotten myself into? Where am I right now?" And it was very overwhelming. But
And
there
to
were,
be clear, at this conference, there are people that had never had a business before, all the way up to Fortune 500 $1 million businesses, people that have been doing the same business for 20 years, and people that just decided they wanted to be entrepreneurs like that weekend. So it was a mixed match, but everyone is very kind.
yeah,
But you definitely feel like there's much bigger shoes out there than yours.
yeah. And it I just saw this world that was so much bigger than me, and I was like, "Oh boy, like what what do I even do?" And so it was really great. I had lunch with Jade and we had a couple other people at our table as well. And everybody was really encouraging. There was another young woman there who was very early on in her business as well. And so we were both, it was you and Nick Rockwell.
Yes, Nick Rock.
Yeah.
I always have the cool kids at my lunch
Yeah.
table.
Yeah,
Let's be honest. Nick Rockwell. How do we
We
describe
wear
Nick?
pink on Wednesdays. Um,
Yeah.
but no, but they were so kind. Like you guys were very, you know, encouraging without being pandering. You weren't
Mhm.
just like, "Oh yeah, you'll totally make it." You're like, "It's hard work, but you can do it. Like you got this." So, it
And
was great.
I was a different kind of encouraging, I think. I think we talked a little bit and I gave you my feedback and then I saw you wavering and I was like, "Okay, let's break this down." And at the time Heather was working for somebody who was taking advantage of her. And I don't
Story of my life. No, I'm
I
kidding.
don't fucking play that game. Let's be clear about that. And so I was like, I got a little rough on her and she doesn't really know me at all. And
Yeah.
so I kind of got up her ass a little bit. I was like, listen, A, you don't owe your success to anyone but you. B, fuck her. And C, do what you want. And then just go do it. And I was kind of like pushing. Have you ever seen like a mother duckling, like trying to get her babies across the road and she's like bumping them off the thing? That's kind of how I felt. But like instead of a nice bump, I like full on like threw her off a building kind of thing.
She pushed me out of the nest.
Right out of the nest onto her face. And lo and behold, Heather's done all of these really great things since then. And Heather started in that VA place, but now she's doing what I feel like is her true passion, which is to do podcasting for a very niche group of nerds. We are a weird group, but we've got a lot of fun things to talk about. And I feel like you found your footing. So, what was it like when you actually found your footing?
Yeah, so it was a process. It took a while, right? And it takes a lot of trial and error. And I think that's something that I try to tell most people is that you're not just going to figure that out. Yeah, the thing that I try to share with people a lot is that it's a process. It takes trial and error. It takes a lot of time to figure out like where you're, I mean, for most people. Some people are like, this is what I want to do. And I've known since I was 7. And I'm just going to pursue that. And that's amazing. And like, go you. But for most of us, it doesn't happen like that, which I think is really interesting because the way the education system is set up, you're supposed to know by the time you're 18. That's a whole other conversation. But still, anyway, like, give yourself a lot of grace because it took me years to figure out that this is actually what I want to do. And even after I figured out that I want to do podcasting and I want to hang out with the nerds all the time, which of course I do. Like, it's obvious. I'm a giant nerd. If you're actually watching this, I am wearing a Scarlet Witch tank top right now that I bought in Disney
Mhm.
World because I'm that kind of person. Yesterday was Mother's Day. I wore it for Mother's Day because she, like, it just, I just, that's who I am. But there's going to be people that will want to tell you how to do things and what you should be doing. And thankfully for me, most of the people that I interacted with, they had my best interest at heart and they were just trying to give advice. They weren't trying to set me in a certain way. Well, yeah, but like you didn't try to actually like put me on a path. You were just like, you can do this, you can figure this out. Like you do what you want to do, but there are a lot of people that will be like, okay, this is what you do to be successful and this is what you do to, for your passion, but you have to
Or buy
figure it
my
out.
thing. If you buy my thing,
Yes.
then you'll be successful. That's was my favorite
And
phrases.
I've fallen for those
Mhm.
because, I wanted so badly to be successful and I wanted so badly to, I don't know, find whatever it is that they're peddling that they found, right? But it has to come from you. And so, realizing, you know what, I don't actually want to do a lot of the things that I've been doing and what certain coaches have taught me. And like, that's not who I am. And it's a hard realization but also it's a very freeing because like then I don't have to worry about what anybody else thinks about what I'm doing because this is for me. And
Yeah,
I
I've
love it and I get
actually,
to hang out around nerds and talk about Marvel and all kinds of crazy stuff. So it's good.
sorry, I interrupted you. I didn't mean to. I hope you can cut
You're fine.
that. Sorry. I've actually had other vendors come up to me. Um, and I wouldn't say the word is posturing, but kind of like showing off their big, beautiful feathers, trying to diminish my success. And I've even had some straight up tell me, like, well, why are you here? I was like, oh, I'm here to demo a new product. Yeah, but why are you at this show? This is such a tiny show. You're not going to meet anybody here. You're not going to see anybody here that's worth seeing. And I was like, I'm sorry, how do you know? Do you have like the guest list? Do you have it in an email? Can you send it to me?
Roster?
Yeah, like how do you know who's going to be here? And fortunately, they were wrong, and I made a great connection. And I will hopefully have good news about that later to share with you. But you'll have some people that are straight up in your face about it. And then you'll have like those, oh gosh, I like to call them like the gossip girls or the gossip boys or whatever you want to call it, like kind of like what we were talking about earlier, like the Reginas that will like look at you and make decisions and impose their thoughts onto you, and you can feel it. It's not even saying like, oh, she looked at me weird. Like, no, they're like really tearing you apart in their minds, and they're
Mhm.
showing it with their body language and their posture. And I had to struggle with that with all of my businesses, but especially this most recent one. And what it came down to is somebody had told me a quote that I remind myself about every time I'm feeling kind of like, God, I suck at this, or who would buy this? Or especially when I started out, I was like, no one's gonna buy this. I just wasted $500 on an event, and no one's gonna buy my things. I did that like the night before, and I cried. It was a true story. I cried a lot. So one thing that somebody had told me is, okay, have you ever read a bad book? Sure, I think we all have. I mean, if you're literate or even bother to read outside of what you're supposed to in class, like, yeah, I've read a lot of books. Did you love all of them? No, some of them were trash. And he had said one thing about authors is they will say, my bad book is better than the one you haven't written. So
That's
you're
fair.
out there doing this, showing off products. Let's say people don't like your artwork. Let's say somebody doesn't like your writing. Whatever it happens to be that you created, it's still better than what they don't have.
Mhm.
And some people that have been in the industry a long time, sometimes they are better than you. And they'll say things like that. They'll say things to you of like, oh, well, it's not as good as this, or I was doing this when I was this age, and blah, blah, blah. Like, okay, well, that was you. That's your story. I'm doing mine.
Mhm.
And what do they say? It's those who cannot do, teach,
Those
those
who
who
can't
cannot
do.
teach, judge,
Yeah,
right?
there it is. Mhm.
And that's where they are. A lot of them don't do this anymore. Or they're so high up in what they're doing that they have other people doing what I would consider what I would call the grunt work. They're on the floor, they're going to the shows, they're talking to the people, that they're standing back on this pedestal they put themselves on,
Yep.
saying like, oh, well, this is what I was able to do, this is what my people are doing. Well, they're not in the trenches anymore. So you still have that to show, like, well, at least I'm still doing it.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying be hostile towards these people. I actually have always like there's gonna be a lot of quotes in this one, the kill them with kindness
Yeah.
mentality. And it just makes them look like jackasses because I'm always so nice about it. Even with the guy that was like, what are you doing here? You'll never make any good connections, blah, blah, blah. Other than my, kind of sarcastic thing, I'm like, oh, I'm sorry. Do you have a copy of the guest list? I'd love to see it. Which is, again, if he had it, I really did want to see it, but
Right.
also made him look like a tool. And he's just like, well, you're not going to make any money here this weekend. I was like, okay, well, if nothing else, I got a chance to go visit Cleveland. How fun is that? Not everyone gets to say that they get to travel for work. And he had nothing to
Like, what
say.
is he
Like,
gonna say to that? Like,
exactly. Like, he had nothing to say.
yeah.
So, and even when people are kind of like rude to me at my booth, which definitely happens, I always turn it on a happy thing. I actually saw at a booth next to me somebody that made pillows, and they put prints of things on pillows. And there's this thing about those of you who have seen, oh my gosh, Heather, give me just a second to pull this from my head.
It's
The
okay.
Witcher.
Yeah.
The Witcher has a weird fan base. They have people that played the games and some people that watched the show and some people that did both. And there's a specific scene from The Witcher where Henry Cavill has a shirt off. And it's one that everyone always talks about, and it's sultry and blah, blah, blah. Well, she had a
Is it the one
pillow.
where he's in the bathtub?
Yes, the one where he's in the bathtub.
Oh yeah,
You can
everybody
see
knows that.
things. Yeah, that one. So she had put that on a pillow. And some jackass walked up to her booth, didn't buy anything, by the way, and was just like, why does everyone always do that photo of Geralt? Why don't they do one of the cool ones? Who would want a pillow with Geralt on it? Why would you do that? And
Clearly, you've never met women.
she looked at him and she's like, well, why not? Why not do it?
Yeah.
And he had no answer for her. So when I actually love that she said that. Some people ask me, they're like, well, why would you go through all the work to, do this? Or why would you make a Zen garden? Or why would you do a pride bracelet? Like, why not?
Hmm.
People love it and people
Yeah.
pay for it. So
Yeah.
clearly there's a market for it.
Yeah.
So why not?
So you can suck it, but don't say
Yeah.
that to them. Be nice
Well, yeah,
because
I mean, be nicer about
they
it,
can't
but
be mean
Although
back
I
to
have
you.
seen like people fight at events, like vendors fight each other. It's fucking crazy. Like I saw two guys punch each other out. I
What?
yes, I literally saw at an event two artists. They're older guys. When I say older, like I'm talking like 50s and older kind of thing.
Uh-huh.
And one guy had the Napoleon syndrome. The other guy was very, very tall. And apparently they started in like a shouting match on Friday. Then by
Sure.
Saturday, they had had a brawl. They had like punched each other in the face and like torn t-shirts and and like some other, it's so funny to watch the cultural dynamic because a bunch of guys, like when I say guys, I'm talking about cisgender guys,
Mm.
jumped in to break them up. And everyone else is just like watching them. And I know how to break up a fight because I did martial arts for so long. It was something we were trained to do when we're coaches and when we're referees. We know how to break up a fight. But I looked at that, I was like, oh my God. And so I started moving my way there and they pulled them apart already. And I was like, are we calling security? Or are we letting this go? Like, what are we being adults? What's happening now? And I had never expected to see a fight there between two artists. They are both fairly well known comic book artists. And apparently there was some type of strife going between the two of them. So try not to punch other people, I would say. Try to use your words, but always carry a big stick if you need to.
Use your nice
Um,
words.
use your nice words. Use your adult words right now. Um, but I know when I finally invented this thing, and I knew that there are things that I always wanted out of life. I always wanted to invent something. I always wanted to travel for work. I always wanted to see these cities and places that I've never seen before. And I finally got to. And I really feel like, have you ever worked on a puzzle and there's like only a couple pieces left? You're like, one of these has to fit in here. I know I'm close, but I can't freaking find it. And when you find
Mm.
that one in there, you put it in, you're like, oh, yes, I knew it went somewhere. Like that's how it feels to me. And if you've never done puzzles before, I can't give you another analogy. But what I'm doing now, I really feel like is what I'm supposed to be doing
Yeah.
and what I was meant to do. I just had to do all these other things to get there.
Yep.
And learning that that's okay was really hard. I'm like, God, why didn't I do this like 20 years ago? Why didn't I do this
Mm.
before COVID? Why didn't I,
Yep.
all of that stuff? And I'm like, well, it's now is the time.
Yep. You're not the person, you weren't the person that you needed to be to do that,
Mhm.
to do what you're doing now. And there's so many things that I've learned, like, okay, as a lot of you are going to be artists and vendors, and you're not your product and you also are not going to be for everybody.
Yeah.
Like, not everybody's going to be into it. And that is 100% okay. I'm starting to do a lot of like auditions for audiobooks and voice acting and stuff like that because I love it. And that is a hard lesson to learn, but like, it's not personal. Even if the person says something that sounds personal, it's not. Like, you're not going to be for everybody. And that is 100% okay. And once you make that okay within yourself, those comments will just be like, all right, whatever, dude.
Hmm.
Like, one of those, like, you don't, when people are on like somebody's Facebook page and they're like, I hate what you do. Okay, you don't have to follow me. Like,
Hmm.
what are you
There's
doing
choice out
here?
there. Yeah. Follow some crazy cat videos if that's your thing. Like,
Yeah. But you don't
and
have to
so,
be here and be negative. Like, what's going on? So something else is going on, obviously, in their life
yeah.
for them to put that on you. And so it is not about you, really.
Mhm.
Like, and that makes it so much easier.
And I would like to just kind of conclude this episode with saying, even the best and brightest in the world that we look at as so successful, even they suffer from imposter syndrome. Actors, some of like the best actors you've ever seen, are like, oh my God, I'm terrible. I don't know why anyone pays me to be in their movies.
Mhm.
Inventors, other people like that we talk about that are million, billion, gajillionaires, however, whatever numbers you want to do. Again, math is not my thing. Yeah, they suffer through it too. So be where you're at. And if you get a fan group, listen to those fan groups.
Yeah.
Listen to them saying, hey, you're great. I can
Treat
do
them
what you're
like
doing.
gold. Treat them
Hmm.
like the best people in the world because they are.
And we'll talk about how to appreciate your fans in another episode for sure. But Heather, do you want to say anything else about this imposter syndrome that I know we've both been through?
Give yourself time. Give yourself grace. Don't make it personal. Like, allow yourself the freedom to explore, to figure out what you want to do, and you're going to feel imposter syndrome unless you are one of those, crazy people that doesn't. Kudos.
Yeah, good job.
Show us how to do that. But you're gonna
Yeah.
feel it at some point. And it's okay to feel it and be like, and recognize it for what it is. And don't give up.
Well, thank you so much for tuning into this episode, and a special thank you to Nerdy Girl Podcast for sponsoring this episode. We'll see you next time.